You don't belong in rooms like this, Marcus.
Come on, Vanessa. We have important people waiting.
Marcus, we found the beneficiary account.
Let them go on stage. I want to hear what they say first.
You don't belong in rooms like this. Marcus. My wife said it loudly enough for the cameras. Then threw a glass of red wine into my face and walked to the stage holding her boss's arm. Everyone saw a humiliated husband. No one knew the man dripping wine onto the ballroom carpet controlled an $8 billion fortune and the votes her boss needed by morning. What no one in that ballroom knew was that the man Vanessa had just humiliated was not broke, dependent, or lucky to be invited, through a private holding company and a family trust. I controlled assets worth a little over $8 billion. More important, I controlled the block of shares that could decide whether Halcyon survived the deal Damien planned to sign the next morning. I did not wipe my face immediately. I let the silence settle first. 200 executives, investors, spouses, and reporters had just watched my wife make a public declaration about who mattered and who did not. Damien smiled as he guided her toward the stage. I folded the stained napkin in my hand and realized that revealing myself in that moment would be the easiest mistake I could make. My name is Marcus Reed. Vanessa knew before we married that my father had left me a family trust. Our prenup even listed my beneficial interest as separate property. What she never knew was the value. The trustees made no lifestyle distributions beyond my declared income. And I never used the holding company as a household account. She assumed the trust was modest. I never corrected the number. Reed Meridian Holdings owned stakes in ports, data centers, insurance platforms, and industrial real estate accumulated over 3 generations. 2 years earlier, an independent valuation put my beneficial interest just above $8 billion, most of it illiquid equity rather than cash. Vanessa had once said she did not want our marriage measured by my family's balance sheet. So I kept living as Marcus. Vanessa had once loved that part of me. We met when she was a junior analyst at a regional development firm, fierce and overprepared, carrying 3 folders into a meeting where everyone else brought 1. She laughed when I told her my ancient sedan had a heater that worked only on left turns. For years, ambition made her brighter rather than colder. I paid no hidden favors into her career. When she applied to Halcyon Group, I knew our holding company owned a minority position through an investment vehicle, but I recused myself from every discussion touching recruitment. Vanessa earned her role. She rose from strategy director to executive vice president because she could walk into a broken project and see the pressure points faster than almost anyone. Then Damien Cross became Halcyon's chief executive. He was polished, patient, and practiced at making people feel selected. Within 6 months, Vanessa began quoting him at dinner. Within a year, she stopped asking how my day had gone. She started describing my consulting work as small business stuff, usually with a smile sharp enough to tell me she wanted me to hear the downgrade. The marriage did not collapse all at once. It thinned. Business dinners replaced weekends. Her phone turned face down. New dresses arrived for events I was not invited to. When I asked whether something had changed between us, Vanessa said I was threatened by her success. I wondered if she was right long enough to become careful instead of angry. 3 weeks before the gala, Reed Meridian received a confidential notice from Halcyon's board. Damien was pursuing a merger with North Star Urban Partners, a transaction that would load Halcyon with debt, transfer several valuable waterfront properties into a new entity, and award Damien and a small executive group extraordinary change of control bonuses. Vanessa was listed among the beneficiaries. The proposal needed approval from shareholders representing 60% of voting stock. Public filings made Reed Meridian look like several unrelated institutional investors. But our trust controlled 41% by itself and had contractual consent rights over another 22% through a long-standing syndicate. Damien needed us, even if he did not yet know who us really was. I could have blocked the deal that afternoon with 1 call. I did not, because the numbers were not the only problem. Our analysts found management fees flowing to 3 advisory firms created within the previous 18 months. Each firm traced back, through different layers, to people connected with Damien. One payment schedule also carried Vanessa's digital approval. I wanted to believe there was an explanation. Marriage makes you negotiate with evidence longer than you would in business. I asked Vanessa over breakfast whether Halcyon's North Star deal was clean. She looked at me for a long second, then asked why a logistics consultant was suddenly interested in a transaction far above his pay grade. The contempt in her question hurt more than the answer she avoided. I told her I had heard concerns from someone familiar with the financing and suggested she review the advisory contracts before attaching her name to anything irreversible. Vanessa put down her coffee and said Damien had warned her about men who disguise insecurity as concern. Then she kissed our son Noah on the forehead, picked up her briefcase, and left without looking at me. No of us 10. Old enough to hear the tension and young enough to believe he might somehow be causing it. I kept breakfast ordinary, asked about his science project, and deliberately burned the second piece of toast because his laugh broke the pressure in the room. When he asked whether Mom was angry with me, I said adults sometimes forget how to listen. His smile faded anyway. That afternoon, I called Evelyn Shaw, General Counsel for Reed Meridian and the person who had managed our family's governance structure since my father's final illness. I asked for a quiet forensic review of every Halcyon payment connected to North Star, plus a preservation order over communications involving Damien, Vanessa, and the outside advisors. Evelyn did not ask whether this was personal. 2 days later, Damien invited me to the anniversary gala himself. The message was almost comical in its politeness. He said Vanessa deserved to have her husband present for the night. Halcyon celebrated its next era. I accepted because the merger documents were scheduled for ceremonial signature at the gala, with final shareholder confirmation the following morning. Vanessa did not seem pleased when I told her. She said the room would be full of institutional investors, press, and people who could influence her future. Then she opened my closet, moved past the suit I had chosen, and told me to wear something that looked less provincial. I remember staring at her hand on the hanger and wondering when embarrassment had replaced affection. The gala took over the top floor of the Marlowe Hotel. Glass walls looked over the city. A string quartet played near the elevators, and every surface seemed designed to reflect expensive light. Vanessa wore a silver gown I had seen only once before. Damien greeted her before he greeted me, resting his hand at the small of her back half a second too long. I noticed. So did other people. But I had not come to catch an affair. I had come because Evelyn's team had found a fourth advisory firm, one nobody had disclosed to the audit committee. Its registered agent was Damien's college roommate. Its largest incoming payment had been approved under Vanessa's credentials 48 hours after the board was told no related party vendors existed. I asked Vanessa quietly if we could speak before the speeches. Her face tightened. She said not tonight. I told her it concerned an approval made under her account and that waiting could make things worse. Damien appeared beside us before she answered. He smiled at me and asked whether I was giving Vanessa another lecture about a business I did not understand. I kept my voice level. I said I understood enough to know that hidden related party fees could destroy a merger and the careers attached to it. Vanessa's eyes flashed. Not with fear, but fury. She accused me of snooping through confidential material to sabotage her promotion. Several nearby conversations stopped. Damien did not calm her. He stepped back and let the audience grow. Vanessa reached for a wine glass from a passing server. I thought she needed something to do with her hand. Instead, she lifted it and threw the wine directly into my face. The room gasped. She said, loudly enough for the closest cameras to catch it, that she was done apologizing for a husband who could not stand seeing her succeed. Then came the sentence everyone remembered. You don't belong in rooms like this. Marcus. She turned to Damien, took his arm, and said she was finished letting my insecurity ruin her future. Damien led her toward the stage as if the scene had been rehearsed. A photographer lowered his camera, then raised it again when he realized the story was still moving. I could have ended the performance with 9 words. My trust controls the votes you need tomorrow. My mouth was already open when my phone vibrated. Evelyn's message read, we found the beneficiary account. Do not disclose yet. In that instant, staying silent stopped being passivity. If I exposed my position now, Damien could destroy the remaining trail before we knew how deeply Vanessa was involved. Outside, I called Evelyn. She told me the hidden advisory payments were not merely fees. A percentage of each payment moved into a private investment vehicle called Axiom Crest. Damien held a beneficial interest. So did Vanessa. Her stake was smaller, but it was real, documented, and tied to the closing of the North Star merger. Strong enough to freeze the merger, she said, but not yet strong enough to prove who designed the arrangement. One authorization had been routed through a server used by Halcyon's outside counsel, and the original audit trail was scheduled for routine deletion after closing. If we moved publicly that night, Damien could claim the structure was lawful and sanitize whatever remained. I told Evelyn to let the morning vote remain on the calendar. Then I went home to an empty bedroom. Vanessa did not return that night. Atunu, șapte sprezece a.m. She texted that she was staying at a hotel because she needed distance from my behavior. At 1:24, a gossip site posted a photo of her entering the Marlowe Lounge beside Damien. The caption called me a jealous consultant who had disrupted an executive celebration. By sunrise, the clip of the wine throw had spread across local business feeds. Vanessa's public relations team issued a statement saying a private marital dispute had regrettably spilled into a professional event. My name was not used, which somehow made the humiliation feel even more deliberate. Noah saw part of the clip before school. He came into the kitchen holding his tablet and asked why Mom threw something at me. I closed the screen, knelt beside him, and said his mother and I were dealing with adult problems that had nothing to do with him. He asked whether I had tried to hurt her job. I told him no, and he searched my face for several seconds. He nodded. But children do not stop worrying because adults choose careful words. At the door, Noah hugged me harder than usual and whispered, "I believe you, Dad." 4 words nearly undid the control I had carried since the gala. I waited until he left before letting myself cry, then washed my face and called Evelyn. The investigation was no longer about saving Pride. It was about keeping him out of their leverage. Her team recovered drafts showing North Star planned to sell 2 Halcyon waterfront parcels within 90 days of closing to shell entities financed by Axiom Crest. Independent appraisals valued the land at nearly $900 million more than the internal transfer price. Someone was preparing to move value out of the company and capture the upside privately. Vanessa's signature appeared on the internal valuation waiver. The metadata showed she had opened the supporting appraisal before approving it. I sat alone at our dining table looking at the timestamp. It was 11:42 p.m. On the same night, she had texted me from a strategy dinner saying she missed being home. The shareholder vote was postponed by Halcyon at 8:10 that morning. Officially, Damien said several institutional investors needed additional time. In reality, our syndicate had refused to confirm consent. Damien immediately began calling the banks behind the deal, trying to identify which investor had moved. By noon, he requested a private meeting with me. He chose a members-only club near the financial district, perhaps because he assumed exclusivity would intimidate me. Damien arrived 10 minutes late and never apologized. He said Vanessa had told him I was struggling financially, that our marriage had become unstable, and that I was trying to interfere with Halcyon because her promotion made me feel small. Then he offered me money, not enough to impress anyone with $8 billion, but enough to insult the man he believed I was. $250,000, a consulting contract, and a mutual non-disparagement agreement if I signed a statement confirming I had fabricated concerns about the North Star transaction during a period of marital stress. I asked whether Vanessa knew about the offer. Damien smiled and said Vanessa understood that difficult transitions required difficult choices. I asked whether the waterfront parcels would be sold after closing. His expression changed almost imperceptibly. He said asset optimization was none of my concern and suggested I focus on preserving access to my son. That was the moment the meeting stopped being merely corporate. Damien knew Vanessa had already contacted a family law attorney. He was using Noah as leverage before any custody dispute had even been filed. I kept my hands flat on the table and asked him to repeat what he meant. He leaned back and said cooperative husbands usually find separation easier than hostile ones. I left without touching the envelope. Before the meeting, Evelyn had confirmed that the jurisdiction allowed a participant to record a conversation without the other party's consent, and our counsel documented the time and location before I entered. My phone captured every word. The recording did not prove the financial fraud, but it preserved Damien's pressure and his decision to connect a business settlement to access to Noah. That evening, Vanessa came home with her mother, Celia. She went directly upstairs and began packing my clothes into suitcases. Celia stood in the doorway watching as if an eviction were a ceremony. Vanessa said the house was leased through Halcyon's executive housing program and that, as the qualifying employee, she had the right to ask me to leave. She said Noah would understand when he was older that she had chosen a future instead of a man determined to remain ordinary. That sentence finally reached somewhere the wine had not. I looked at the woman I had supported through late-night exams, relocations, and years when her bonuses were promises rather than money, and realized she had rewritten our entire marriage as a burden she escaped. I moved into a small furnished apartment owned by one of our companies. The same kind of place I used when traveling for work. I could have taken a penthouse, hired staff, or surrounded myself with visible proof of wealth. Instead, I made Noah's favorite pasta in a kitchen with 3 pans and waited for the next call from Evelyn. It came just after midnight. Halcyon's internal IT team had begun a systems migration affecting the exact servers that held earlier versions of the North Star valuation files. The timing was too convenient. Evelyn had already secured court-authorized preservation through our shareholder rights. But if Damien's people deleted local records, proving individual intent would become slower. Then we found the safeguard my father had insisted on after Reed Meridian financed Halcyon's 2008 restructuring. The investor rights agreement required major valuation drafts and board packets to be mirrored automatically to an independent archive before management could revise or delete them. Damien could erase Halcyon's local servers. He could not reach copies that had already left the company under a contract older than his tenure. The archive held 6 versions of the waterfront valuation. It also held comments from Vanessa. In one, she asked whether the lower internal price could be defended if challenged by minority shareholders. Damien replied that the consent block would be managed before anyone understands the spread. Vanessa answered with 3 words, then move fast. The next morning, Vanessa filed for temporary custody, alleging that my unstable income and obsessive interference with her employer created an unpredictable environment for Noah. She attached screenshots of the gossip coverage and a statement from Damien describing me as disruptive. She did not mention the offer he had made me, the hidden fees, or her stake in Axiom Crest. Our family attorney answered Vanessa's custody filing without turning my wealth into a weapon. We produced tax returns showing stable declared income, school pickup logs, medical appointments, travel calendars, and messages documenting my daily role with Noah. We also submitted the lawful recording of Damien tying cooperation to easier access to my son. My net worth remained sealed because parenting, not money, was the issue. The judge declined to grant Vanessa sole temporary custody. Instead, the court maintained the existing parenting schedule until a full hearing. It was a small result compared with what was coming. But when Noah arrived at my apartment that Friday carrying his backpack and a science model with 1 broken wing, it felt larger than any balance sheet I had ever seen. We repaired the model at the kitchen table with glue, tape, and 2 paper clips. Noah asked whether I was going to divorce Mom. I said I did not know what the final paperwork would look like, but I knew he would still have 2 parents who loved him. I did not tell him one of those parents had helped gamble nearly $1 billion in company value. Evelyn's team needed one final piece, proof that Damien and Vanessa knew Reed Meridian's consent was required and tried to bypass it. The archive showed concern about the consent block but not identity. Then a former Halcyon Treasury analyst named Lena Ortiz contacted our counsel after receiving a preservation notice and asked for whistleblower protection. Lena had been instructed to split one shareholder notice into 4 separate mailings addressed to different fund names, even though internal records showed a common beneficial controller. She thought the change was strange and kept her original work notes. Damien later told her the investor group was old money asleep at the wheel and that fragmented notice would reduce the chance of coordinated opposition. More important, Vanessa had attended that meeting. Lena's notes recorded Vanessa asking whether the beneficial owner could challenge the transaction after closing. Damien answered that once the debt funded and parcels transferred, unwinding the deal would become prohibitively expensive. Vanessa wrote beside his answer, "Close first. Litigate later." That was the line that ended any remaining uncertainty for me. She had not merely trusted the wrong executive, she had understood the plan depended on making resistance costly after the fact. I sat with that truth in the quiet apartment and let myself grieve the woman I had married before deciding what to do about the executive she had become. Reed Meridian called a special shareholder governance session for Monday morning, the same day Halcyon had rescheduled the merger approval. Under the investor rights agreement, any holder controlling more than 35% could demand identity verification, related party disclosure, and an independent vote count before a change of control transaction. Damien tried to block the session. His attorneys argued the investors lacked standing because the shares appeared under separate custodial names. Evelyn responded with the beneficial ownership certificates, syndicate agreements, and 20 years of amendments. The hearing officer ruled the session valid. For the first time, Damien was forced to face a room whose rules he did not control. Vanessa called me Sunday night. Her voice was softer than it had been in weeks. She said we had both made mistakes and asked whether I really wanted to destroy everything she had worked for because our marriage was failing. I told her I did not want to destroy her career. I wanted her to tell the truth about Axiom Crest and the waterfront valuation. Instead, I asked one final question. If the deal were harmless, why had she approved a valuation she knew was low? Vanessa said everyone at that level made compromises. She said ordinary people judged outcomes without understanding what leadership required. I told her ordinary people were the ones who paid for leaders who called theft a compromise. She ended the call. 10 minutes later, Damien's legal team circulated a notice accusing an unnamed shareholder group of attempting to extort Halcyon by delaying the merger. Financial reporters picked it up before midnight. By breakfast, the market was full of speculation about a hostile activist fund. None of them guessed the controlling beneficiary was Vanessa's husband. Monday's governance session took place in Halcyon's glass boardroom and was streamed to major shareholders. Damien sat at the head of the table. Vanessa sat 2 seats away, wearing the same expression she used when she wanted fear to look like impatience. She looked at me when I entered and whispered to her attorney, probably asking why I had been admitted. Damien stood and objected immediately. He said the meeting concerned institutional shareholders, not spouses with personal grievances. Evelyn remained standing beside me and asked the corporate secretary to begin identity verification. One by one, the custodial entities appeared on the screen, followed by their common beneficial owner, Reed Meridian Holdings. Then the secretary read my name, Marcus Elias Reed, sole voting beneficiary of Reed Meridian Holdings. The screen showed 41% direct voting control, another 22% under enforceable consent agreements, and an independently appraised beneficial interest of approximately $8. $3 billion. It was not $8 billion sitting in a checking account. It was ownership, control, and years of compounding value. I watched her eyes move from the screen to me, then back to the number. Damien's face changed differently. He was not thinking about our marriage or the gala. He was calculating votes. For years, people had mistaken my refusal to display money for lack of money. In that room, the mistake became expensive all at once. Vanessa whispered, $8 billion? It was the first thing she said to me that morning. I answered, a little over. Her attorney leaned toward her, but she did not hear him. I could see the exact moment she replayed the house, the car, the consulting invoices, every dinner where she had apologized for me being ordinary. I did not enjoy it as much as I had imagined I might. Humiliation is not repaired by reversing its direction. I told the board that my wealth was not the issue before them. The issue was whether executives had concealed related party compensation, manipulated valuations, and attempted to bypass shareholder consent in order to transfer value into entities they could benefit from personally. Evelyn distributed the archived valuations, payment trails, Axiom Crest ownership records, and Lena Ortiz contemporaneous notes. She played the portion of Damien's recording where he connected my cooperation to easier access to Noah. The board chair asked Damien whether the voice was his. He requested a recess instead of answering. The chair denied the recess until the related party disclosures were addressed. Damien said Axiom Crest was a passive investment vehicle and that he had never directed Halcyon funds into it. Evelyn then displayed bank records showing advisory fees entering 3 firms and moving, within days, into Axiom Crest accounts. Dates matched the merger milestones. Vanessa finally spoke. She said Damien had represented the structure as an executive co-investment opportunity approved by counsel. That was possible, and I wanted it examined. Then Evelyn displayed the archived comment where Vanessa asked whether the artificially low valuation could survive a shareholder challenge and wrote, "Close first. Litigate later." The room changed again. Vanessa looked at me as if I had betrayed her by possessing the evidence of what she had done. She said I had invaded her privacy. I told her the records belonged to Halcyon and had been preserved under investor rights established years before either of us worked there. I had not searched her phone or opened her personal accounts. Her decisions had documented themselves. The board suspended Damien and Vanessa pending an independent investigation. The merger vote was canceled. Banks froze the closing facilities. North Star issued a statement distancing itself from the undisclosed advisory structure and agreed to cooperate. By noon, the transaction that had been described as inevitable was not merely delayed, it was effectively dead. Security asked Damien for his executive credentials. He handed them over without looking at me. Vanessa hesitated when they requested hers. I remembered the gala, the way she had lifted the glass while a room watched. She unclipped her badge slowly and placed it in the security officer's hand. No one applauded. That made the moment feel cleaner. After the meeting, Vanessa followed me into the corridor. She asked why I had never told her what I was worth. I reminded her that I had told her about the family trust before we married, that our prenup listed separate beneficial interests, and that she had once said she never wanted to know the number because she wanted our life to be ours. Then she said she had thought I lacked ambition. I told her ambition was not the same as appetite. My father spent his life acquiring companies, but he measured success by whether the people inside them still had jobs. Pension. And customers after the spreadsheets changed. Damien measured success by how much value he could move toward himself before anyone noticed. Vanessa cried for the first time. Not dramatically. Her shoulders lowered. And she covered her mouth as if the room had suddenly become difficult to breathe in. She said Damien had made her feel chosen by the people who decided everything. I felt grief before satisfaction, because I remembered when she had never needed anyone's permission to feel valuable. I told her that was the woman I had loved. I did not take her hand. Compassion did not erase consequence. The board investigation later found Vanessa had not designed the shell company structure, but she had knowingly approved the suppressed valuations and failed to disclose her Axiom Crest interest. Damien had directed the scheme. Her conduct was less central than his and still serious enough to end her executive career at Halcyon. Damien was terminated for cause. The board referred the financial records to federal and state authorities, and civil claims were filed to recover advisory payments. I will not pretend an investigation is the same as a conviction. Legal outcomes take time. What mattered immediately was that the transfer stopped. The evidence was preserved, and the people involved could no longer control the process. The family court received the governance findings and the full recording from the club meeting. Vanessa's request for sole custody lost its foundation. We agreed to shared parenting with strict language, preventing either parent from using Noah to carry messages about litigation, money, or blame. I asked for no order reducing her time with him. He needed stability, not victory. When Noah asked why reporters were saying I was rich, I told him our family had investments I had chosen to keep private. He asked whether $8 billion meant we could buy a professional basketball team. I laughed for the first time in weeks and told him it meant we could afford better glue for his science projects. He rolled his eyes exactly the way I hoped he would. I also told him something more important. Money did not make what happened at the gala acceptable, and it did not make me better than his mother. He had seen adults online treating the story like a revenge fantasy, as if the value of my dignity had depended on the number revealed in the boardroom. I wanted him to understand the opposite. The wine throw was wrong when I looked ordinary. It would have been wrong if I had $10, 10 million, or 8 billion. Vanessa's mistake was not failing to recognize a wealthy man. Her mistake was believing a person needed wealth, title, or usefulness to deserve basic respect. That lesson mattered more to me than every headline built around the surprise. Reed Meridian increased its position in Halcyon after the failed merger and led a restructuring of the board. I declined the chairmanship. Instead, we added stronger related party disclosure rules, independent valuation requirements, and whistleblower protection that could not be overridden by the chief executive. Lena Ortiz accepted a role on the new ethics committee. Vanessa moved out of the executive housing apartment before the lease ended. She rented a smaller place near Noah's school and began consulting for a nonprofit after several months out of work. I did not arrange the job, block the job, or call anyone about the job. For the first time in years, her future belonged entirely to choices I was not making. Months later, Vanessa and I met with a mediator to finalize the divorce. She looked tired but more present than she had during the last year of our marriage. She said the hardest part was realizing Damien had not transformed her into someone else. He had simply rewarded choices she had already begun making. I respected her for saying that. She asked whether I had ever planned to tell her the exact value of Reed Meridian. I said yes. On our 15th anniversary, I had intended to invite her into the family council, the point my father's trust documents recommended for a spouse in a stable, long-term marriage. I had even asked Evelyn to prepare the briefing. Vanessa looked down at the table. We had not made it to year 15. That answer hurt both of us. But it was not punishment. It was simply another version of the life we might have had. Vanessa said she was sorry for the wine, for Damien, for the custody filing, and for every time she used the word ordinary as if it were an accusation. I believed she meant it. Believing an apology did not require rebuilding the marriage. The divorce became final without a public fight over my trust. Our prenup treated premarital beneficial interests separately, and the assets we accumulated together were divided through mediation. Vanessa did not leave with nothing. Nor did I use wealth to make her afraid. Consequences are most satisfying when they are proportional, not theatrical. The first anniversary after the gala, Halcyon held its celebration in the same Marlowe ballroom. I attended because the new chief executive asked me to speak about governance. I stood near the spot where the wine had hit me and noticed that the carpet had been replaced. That small detail made me smile more than the invitation did. I did not tell the room the story they expected. I did not describe revenge, hidden billions, or the moment Vanessa's face changed. I told them that power is most dangerous when people believe the person across from them has none. A healthy company is one where the truth does not need a wealthy shareholder hiding in plain sight to survive. Outside the hotel, Noah was waiting with my sister. He was taller, louder, and carrying another school project. Vanessa was meeting us later for dinner because we had reached the stage of co-parenting where ordinary evenings mattered more than legal documents. Life had not returned to what it was. It had become something less polished and more honest. On the drive home, Noah asked if I regretted staying silent after the wine hit me. I told him there are moments when silence is fear and moments when silence is discipline. The difference is whether you are hiding from what must be done or making room to do it properly. That night, I had needed the second kind. I also told him never to confuse patience with permission. I had not accepted Vanessa's contempt. I had delayed my response because a larger truth was still hidden behind the insult. Once the evidence was safe, I spoke clearly. In the right room, with facts strong enough that nobody could dismiss them as the wounded pride of a husband. He asked whether being worth $8 billion made the fight easier. I told him yes, in ways I would never pretend away. Wealth bought experienced counsel, time, and access to records most people might struggle to preserve. But money did not create the evidence, and it did not make cruelty wrong. The lesson I wanted him to keep was not be rich. It was build proof, use rules, and do not let humiliation choose your next move. Vanessa once told me I did not belong in rooms like that. She was right in a way neither of us understood at the time. I did not belong in any room where dignity was treated as a membership benefit. Neither did she. Neither did the waiter, the analyst, the assistant, or anyone else whose title could be used as permission to humiliate them. My father used to say that wealth reveals more than it changes. If you need people to know what you own before they respect you, the problem is not secrecy. If discovering someone's fortune suddenly makes you regret your cruelty, the regret has arrived for the wrong reason. I understand that sentence now better than I did when he was alive. The ending is also that Halcyon's waterfront properties remain inside the company. Now governed by valuation rules, no executive can quietly waive. Employees who raised questions received formal protection. The transaction that was supposed to enrich a few people became the reason a system learned how to resist the next person who tried the same thing. As for Vanessa, I do not hate her. Hatred would keep the gala alive forever. I remember the woman who laughed inside my broken sedan and the woman who lifted a wine glass in front of 200 people. Both were real. Loving the first version did not obligate me to keep accepting the second. I could remember both without letting either version control the rest of my life. There is a photograph from that gala still online. In it, wine is running down my face while Vanessa turns away with Damien. People share it beside the boardroom image, revealing the $8 billion trust, as though the second photograph proves the first was a mistake. They have the lesson backward. The first photograph was a mistake before anyone knew what I owned. The second merely removed the excuse people use when they think respect should be reserved for the powerful. If the story has any value beyond its shock, it is this: never wait for someone's hidden worth to become visible before deciding they deserve dignity. I learned something else, too. Revenge asks, how can I make them feel what I felt? Justice asks, what truth needs to survive after the feeling passes? The night Vanessa threw wine in my face. Revenge would have been one sentence and a stunned ballroom. Justice required me to walk away, preserve evidence, and return when the facts could no longer be erased. That choice cost me a marriage, weeks of public embarrassment, and nights when my son slept in the next room while I stared at documents proving how far someone I loved had gone. I would not romanticize any of it. Discipline does not make pain noble. It simply keeps pain from choosing your next mistake for you. In the end, I did not need Vanessa to discover that I was worth $8 billion. I needed her to discover that the man she dismissed had never been small. Money only made the revelation visible to a room trained to count value in numbers. My worth had been there before the screen showed it. And so had hers, before ambition taught her to forget. That is why I never framed the boardroom as the day I became powerful. It was the day other people finally saw a form of power I had carried quietly for years, the ability to wait, to document, to protect the people caught in someone else's scheme, and to refuse the easy victory when a lasting one was still possible. If there is one image I keep from the whole ordeal, it is not the wine glass or Vanessa's face beneath the $8 billion figure. It is Noah at my kitchen table holding 2 paper clips while we repaired his science model. Everything I did afterward had to be good enough that I could still look at him when the headlines were gone. Money can buy lawyers, buildings, privacy, influence, and time. It cannot decide what kind of person uses those advantages. That decision is made in smaller moments, usually when nobody applauds. Mine was made with wine on my shirt, my son's trust in my hands, and one choice: not to make humiliation the biggest fact in the room when truth was still waiting to become stronger.